Hi, I'm Karlan Tucker, founder of Smarter Social Security. I founded this company to help Americans optimize their Social Security and other sources of income to have the most secure retirement possible. Today with me is Dr. Laurence Kotlikoff. He's a Boston University professor, a world-class advisor to governments around the world like Russia and England and others. He's an economist. He's a frequent contributor to Bloomberg and Forbes and PBS, as well as other publications. Dr. Kotlikoff is largely considered one of the most knowledgeable individuals on Social Security in our country. He's an author or co-author of over 16 books, the most recent being The Clash of Generations. Thank you for joining me, Dr. Kotlikoff.
It's great to be with you, Karlan.
Dr. Kotlikoff, when it comes to Social Security, do you just get whatever the system pays you, or do I have the ability to influence my lifetime income?
There's a lot of things you can do to make sure you get the most benefits from Social Security, and so it's not a simple, straightforward thing at all. The system is horribly complicated. The handbook of Social Security has 2,728 rules. Then there are literally tens of thousands of rules about those rules in the program operating manual system. So you have different things you can do, and unless you know what to do, you'll make, I think, a mistake very, very easily. And the way you can do better is to think about when you want to take your benefits. Social Security gives a big incentive for waiting to take benefits. But then another thing is to make sure you get all the benefits that are available to you. There are not just your own retirement benefits, but spousal, survivor, divorcee benefit, child benefits. And then you got to make sure that doing one thing, like trying to wait, doesn't mess up trying to take more than one of those benefits, and taking more than one of those benefits doesn't mess up trying to wait. So the strategy is very complicated, actually.
I think it would surprise most Americans to realize that there are over 500 ways you can claim Social Security. Is that accurate, and why are there so many ways?
Well, actually, it's not accurate. It depends on the household. It could be that a married couple, our software that your associates are using to figure out the best strategies for people. You know, a typical married couple, our software may go through 17,000 different combinations of when to take what. You know, for example, if you and I were married, you'd have to decide when to take your spousal benefit and also your retirement benefit. I'd have to decide when to take my spousal benefit and my retirement benefit. And then there are 8 years to take our retirement benefits. There's between 62 and 66 to figure out about spousal benefits. Well, actually, it could even be longer. And there's a months within each year. So if you think about all the combinations, it can really be that you have to run through 17,000 cases. No human being can do that in any finite period of time in his head and get it right. So that's why you need sophisticated software and the right computers. Modern computers can do that kind of calculation in a half a second, and our software runs that quickly.
Well, it's important, though, as long as we're talking about software, that it's the right software, because I would think that it's dependent upon the information put in as to what's going to come out on the back end. If you have bad information in the front end, you won't get the optimized results at the back end.
Yeah, you need to make sure that the inputs that are going in are correct. People, for example, can go to 7 different places at Social Security to get a benefit estimate, but they can go online, they can go and talk to people on the phone from Social Security, they can go to the office, but the number they come back with won't necessarily be the right number that they should be using putting into a program because it may be quoted in today's dollars or future dollars. It may incorporate real wage growth in the economy and inflation or not. It may be net of Medicare premiums. It may be taking into account deductions for the income tax that have to be paid on Social Security. So we are very, very careful about the inputs, but we're also equally careful about how those inputs are used under the hood. You can't see that just by running a program, what's under the hood, but I don't know how I can get anybody to trust me, except that I do have a long record of working in this area. And I can just say to you that my company, we've spent years getting this right under the hood, spending a lot of time talking to Social Security actuaries so we understand what these rules actually mean in plain English so that we're not misprogramming it. It's much more complicated than one would remotely believe. It's more complicated really than the federal income tax, and we all know how complicated that is.
Yeah, that's very much so.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of lots of misinformation about Social Security out there. I know that it turns out that most advisors have not learned about it themselves to advise their clients. Financial advisors, CPAs don't seem to be overly knowledgeable about it, maybe because it's so complex. People go to then their local branch office of Social Security, and oftentimes they're misinformed, or not intentionally, but they aren't given the right information. Then they go to the Google search engine 7 million times a month and look for help on Social Security there. And where do people get the right answers on Social Security?
The knowledge is, you're absolutely right, the knowledge is pretty limited. I was just down in Florida talking to a group of financial planners, about 50. These were CPAs. I asked them in the middle of my talk, do any of you know how to, if you've got a client who's already collecting and they're below full retirement age, do you know any way to raise their retirement benefit? And nobody had the answer. And I said, well, you know, all 50 or so people, CPAs, I said, well, here's what people can do. They can get to full retirement age, suspend their benefit, start it up again at a 32% higher level at age 70. Nobody knew that. Okay, so right there, you know, is striking evidence of the lack of knowledge. But then you'd say, okay, maybe you could go to the Social Security website and learn this. No, the Social Security website is highly misleading what they have there. Just the basic things about how spousal benefits are provided is highly misleading. I write a column every week for the PBS NewsHour website answering questions about Social Security, and sometimes I pose questions to myself that I then answer because I think here's a good question that people need to have the answer to. And recently I read a column about, is the statement on the Social Security website about spousal benefits correct? And I copied exactly what they had, and then I went on for several paragraphs pointing out everything that was wrong with it. So you can't get, unless you talk to a technical expert at Social Security, and they are very far and few between, you're not going to get a good advice. The people at Social Security aren't even supposed to give advice, but they end up doing that, and they're going to come up with what they think is your best strategy, but they're not going to be able to do 17,000 calculations in their head for you. So that's not really the way to go.
Okay. Tell us about your friend at Brown University and how you helped him.
Okay, I have a friend, a very close friend, dear friend, Glenn Lowry, who's a full professor at Brown. He's one of the top economists in the world. He's absolutely brilliant, written in all kinds of areas of, and his wife, Linda, who is also an excellent economist, worked at Tufts University. Tragically, she passed away a couple years ago. And so I was having dinner with Glenn, this is about now a year ago, and he was 65 at the time, and we were talking about what he was going to do, and he was talking about downsizing his home, and he told me out of the blue he was going to take his Social Security retirement benefit at 70. I said, that's a good idea. I said, Glenn, do you think you could get any survivor benefits based on Linda's earnings record? He said, no, because I had the higher earnings record. I said, Glenn, do you think you could get any survivor benefits based on Linda's earnings record? He said, no, really, look, I had the higher earnings record. They're not going to pay me benefits for that. I said, Glenn, if I can make you what I think would probably be $120,000 in the course of about a minute, will you pay for dinner? And he said, yes, absolutely,
Wow.
Big smile. And I explained to him that he could get survivor benefits based on Linda's earnings record by next year. At that time he was 65. Now he's 66. By going in, applying just for her survivor benefit, and now he's going to collect 4 years of her full retirement benefit, which is around $30,000 a year for 4 years, $120,000 over the 4 years. And then at 70, he'll go in and collect his retirement benefit and get a little bit more in his monthly check. So he was about to leave $120,000 on the table. This is one of the smarter economists you'll ever come across.
Well, Dr. Kotlikoff, I view you as very intelligent, accomplished, and knowledgeable in this field. And then you describe this man as extremely intelligent. If he doesn't know how to maximize it, what hope does the average American have? How do we get we can't all sit down with dinner with you.
Yeah, well, the software that we've developed, and then again, your company is providing to advisors, does this much better than I can. I can't go through any particular household's case. I can figure out kind of, generally in Glenn's case, it wasn't too hard to figure out what was the generally right thing to do, but our software, when I ran him through the software, I could confirmed exactly what to do, and that it was close to 120,000. But the software has all my knowledge and the knowledge of my engineers who are very committed to getting everything right. I'm an academic. I make my living basically as a professor. And my company is here to help people and to keep people employed, American computer engineers. It's a great privilege and joy to me to employ people, to have a small company. And if I don't make any money personally, which it's not a big deal to me, this is not the first priority. The first priority is to make sure every little detail is right under the hood. And these details are critically important because you've got two people, in the case of a married couple, where their optimal strategy for one person will depend on the optimal strategy for the other. So you have to be optimizing over both of the individuals jointly. And getting that all right requires a lot of knowledge, a lot of software engineering knowledge, and also optimization in terms of just numerical processing. How can you do 17,000 calculations correctly within a half a second?
Yeah.
And in some cases it takes 10 minutes because we have to go through 100,000 calculations in some survivor situations. So it's not always a half a second, but it's we're trying to do it absolutely correctly because that's what we care about.
Well, Dr. Kotlikoff, you've spent a lot of time, years, developing this software to be accurate and as thorough as possible to help people optimize Social Security. But when I think about the American economy and the debt we take and maybe the direction our country is headed, it makes me pause and have some concern about, will Social Security be there? Can you address a little bit your views on the American economy and how that might impact Social Security?
Well, Social Security is in significant financial trouble. It's really underfunded by about 32%. That's about the degree of underfunding of Detroit. And it just declared bankruptcy.
Yes.
So the question is, will the benefits be cut? Our software allows you to cut the benefits for your client to go through, hey, what if benefits are cut? What would be the optimal strategy if benefits are cut by 20% starting at this date? It allows you to do other things, like set how long somebody might live and enter what rate of return you want to discount the benefits at. So there's a lot of options in the software, but I don't think that politically Social Security is going to be cut in terms of current retirees or people that are now 55 or older. I don't think that will ever happen politically. They may do other things to get Social Security to be able to pay its benefits, like raise income taxes or raise corporate income taxes, but I don't see them cutting Social Security benefits, to tell you the truth. But it is in jeopardy, but it's really part of a bigger problem the country has in not having a path of taxes that are going to cover all the commitments to spending. We've been spending years taking money from young workers, promising them large benefits, handing them out to older people in the form of Social Security health care benefits. And God knows that a lot of these older people need that. But Warren Buffett doesn't need it. And we've been handing very big benefits even to him. And that's not all going to work out for our kids and our grandkids. So we have to make some big changes through time.
Sure. Now, when it comes to claiming Social Security, we talked about there's so many different variables and choices. The first would be that you've got to be 62 years of age, and that'd be the earliest you could claim, but you don't get the most benefits. What reduction might you have by claiming early versus maximizing or optimizing?
Well, if you're a survivor, if you're a widow, you can start getting widow's benefits starting even at age 60. And if you're a disabled widow, our software is not yet handling disabled people, but it will probably in a few months. Disabled widows can get survivor benefits even starting at 50. So, but if we're talking about a married couple, yeah, I can take my retirement benefit at 62, but if my spouse has started to take, let's say, his retirement benefit, let's suppose I'm the woman in this marriage, hypothetical marriage, then I'm forced by Social Security to take my spousal benefit. And because I'm deemed to be taking my spousal benefit, I could get really hurt on the spousal benefit because I won't get my full spousal benefit. I'll get my what's called an excess spousal benefit. So let's say, again, you're the husband and I'm the wife. What you're doing could lead me to be forced, if I take things early or too early, to do things I don't want to do. And same thing if I'm doing a certain thing. So the Social Security has these provisions about forcing you into taking benefits that you may not know that you're being forced to take. So you have to play your cards right. And the software says exactly what to do to get what we think would be the highest lifetime benefits, subject to your inputs and your own statement about how long you expect to, what's your maximum age of life, what's the most you could live to, and also some other factors like, do you think Social Security benefits will be cut or not, and what rate of return do you feel is appropriate for taking money you're going to getting in the future and valuing that today in the present. That's called a present value calculation.
So there's a number of different benefits you can access. There's your own, is that called your retirement benefit?
There's your own retirement benefit. There's, if you're married, there's a spousal benefit. If your spouse passes away, there's a survivor benefit. If you're divorced, you can get divorcee benefits. If you've been divorced, if you were married for 10 years or more, you can get benefits as a divorced spouse.
Okay.
And then also as a divorced survivor. And you could even be married and get survivor benefits on a former spouse if you got remarried after age 60. So these are the kind of little things that people don't know about that matter to what their optimal strategy is. Gee, I've been married, just got married at 61, I'm now 65, and I'm thinking about, I'm married to you, but this other person I was married to for 15 years, he was a higher earner, and I can get, and he's now passed away, I can get survivor benefits based on him. If that's not known to people, then they'll make the wrong decision.
And when you say wrong decision, you might claim off of one benefit where claiming off of a different benefit would have been a higher amount, or you might claim one benefit that wipes out another benefit.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, so like you said, you can't do it in your head. You got to have some expert help, and the way to access you for me or anyone else is to go to our calculations that you've created in this calculator, and your actuaries and all the work you've put together. Your knowledge is there, and now we get to benefit as if you were at our dinner table.
Yeah, the software is much smarter than I am at this point.
Yeah, okay.
No question about it. It can do in a half a second what I can't do in a lifetime because it's doing all these calculations.
Right. Now, 62 for most people, couples, was the earliest you can take. Then age 66 is called your PIA, your primary insurance amount, correct?
That's your full retirement benefit.
Your full retirement benefit. And then at age 70 would be where you could get the most. It doesn't do any good to go beyond age 70 and keep waiting, right?
Right. Now, your retirement benefit will increase up through full retirement age because it won't be reduced. And then after full retirement age, there's something called the delayed retirement credit. Now, so you just raised a question, could I get even higher benefits beyond age 70? It's not by waiting to take benefits, but by continuing to work. What happens is that Social Security recomputes your past covered earnings and then may increase your benefit.
Yes.
Especially if you're a high earner, if you're earning above the Social Security ceiling, it turns out that will automatically happen, that if you continue to work after age 60, every year that you earn above this ceiling, which is now around $114,000, and be higher in the future every year, but your benefit level will automatically increase because of this recomputation of benefits.
They look back at the past 35 highest years of earnings, correct?
Yeah. So here I am. I'm 70. I'm earning $120,000. That's above the ceiling this year. Well, that actually is going to. It turns out the way they do the calculation that will automatically replace one of the other 35 years and give you a higher average and therefore a higher benefit.
So do I recall that from 62 to 66 by waiting, you can increase your benefit by something like almost 7% plus cost of living adjustments that may occur, and from 66 to 70, is that by more like 8%?
Yeah, it doesn't compound, it's more additive. So for example, between full retirement age, which is currently age 66, it's scheduled to go to 67. If you wait between 66 to 70, your benefit level after inflation will start 32% higher. So that's 4 years times 8.
Okay.
So it's not a compounding, but it's additive.
So is it fair to say that if you take it early, younger than age 66, you're robbing yourself of what you otherwise were supposed to get, and if you wait till 70, you're actually getting an added benefit of a boost on what you would have otherwise gotten?
Yeah, you can get, by deferring your benefit, you're in effect giving up money for 4 years in order to get a higher annuity. And an annuity, as we know, is a payment that continues until you die.
Okay.
And the nice thing about Social Security annuities is they're fully indexed against inflation. We could argue about whether it's the right inflation index, but they're pretty much protected against that. Now, so should anybody take their retirement benefit early? That's a question. It turns out that if I'm under full retirement age, and let's say you're, again, my spouse, I'm sorry you have to be married to me for this discussion, but let's say you're my wife, I'll be the husband if you don't mind.
Okay.
And you're 67 and I'm 64. Why would I want to take my retirement benefit early? And let's say you haven't taken any benefits yourself. Well, if I take my retirement benefit early, then you can get your spousal benefit because I have filed for my retirement benefit. So by going early, I can enable you to take a spousal benefit, which will be half of my full retirement benefit. Not my reduced benefit, but my full retirement benefit. Now, this requires you not to file for your retirement benefit. You're going to wait till 70 to get your own retirement benefit. But here between 67 and 70, you're going to get half of my full retirement benefit. If I'm a high earner, that could be half of $30,000. So by doing this, you can pick up $45,000, $15,000, half of $30,000 is $15,000. We're talking about 3 years, that's $45,000 that extra that you get because I file early. But now I'm stuck with a lower retirement benefit seemingly for the rest of my life. But what I say, I was 64, right? When I get to 66, which is my full retirement age under this assumption, I'll be able to suspend my retirement benefit and start it up again at 70 at a 32% higher level. So I won't necessarily give up too much by going early, but by going early, I'll enable you to get your full spousal benefit. So that's an example where a general rule of thumb is not necessarily the right rule.
Okay.
It could be a rule of dumb rather than a rule of thumb.
Okay, so our viewers are not going to remember everything in that example you just gave and not know how to maximize or optimize on their own. But if they go to us and through Smarter Social Security and they use your calculator system, then it asks the appropriate questions, determines what's the optimal strategy, and it'll figure that out and propose that to them.
Yeah, and we are still, the system is so complicated that we're still working to improve it all the time and updating it all the time. So every little thing that I can think of doing, we haven't yet done.
Yeah.
We haven't yet incorporated disabled workers, but we are doing that. We're in the process, and we're also, where it's feasible to enter just a benefit amount, we're adding that this month. For example, if you're a divorcee, your ex's past earnings history, the earnings history of your former spouse, is not available to you. Social Security won't give it to you because of privacy rules. But they will tell you about the spousal benefit that you can collect on your ex, and also if he's, let's say, died, or he or she, they'll tell you about the survivor benefit. Now, exactly how you ask that question, you'll get back a different answer. And if you put the wrong number into our program or anybody's program, you'll get the wrong recommendations as to what to do. So we're in the process of letting people put in an answer, but we're asking enough questions about how they got that answer so that we can unravel that number and make sure that we've got it right under the hood, so that we will, in effect, transform that benefit number into the proper past earnings history or synthetic earnings history that we can then properly use in doing the optimization.
Now, I want to clarify something. Because you're so knowledgeable and because Social Security is so complicated, you kind of made it sound like to me that there's still improvement to be done in the calculator, which is true. However, that doesn't mean that your calculator is inferior to others on the market. My perception is that you probably have done more work than most.
I think we've got, when I look at the other programs out there, I can tell right off the bat that they're not This may be too strong. I haven't necessarily looked at every single program out there. There's obviously a lot of free online programs that are very simple, but when you look at these programs that are that simplistic, taking so few inputs and aren't asking questions about the nature of the inputs, that just say, put in your benefit amount for yourself and your spouse, and here's what to do, and then go buy our product. That's the kind of thing that you'll see on certain websites and certain other programs that you even have to pay money for, good money, much more than our company is involved with. So I can tell from what's above the hood that what's under the hood can't be done carefully, because so no program I don't think out there has everything done yet. But I think we're the furthest along and we're the most careful.
Okay. When our advisors use your Social Security to help optimize their clients' Social Security lifetime income, is it possible that amount that your program is giving them in benefits, it would be greater than what they would see if they went directly to the Social Security site online?
Well, the Social Security site online doesn't allow you to optimize. For example, it's not calculating if you're a couple. You can't get them to figure out what your lifetime benefits will be if you do this and your spouse does that. So this is where our software is important. I think Social Security would do well to license our software from us,
sure,
actually, and give that to the public. But so no, you can't get from Social Security what you can get from our software, in the sense that you can't get an optimal strategy, or can't see the implications of different strategies. What Social Security will do is, if you tell them exactly what you want to do, they'll give you the correct number of benefits that they're actually going to give you. But if you don't know exactly what to do, they will take it upon themselves often to suggest things that you might do, which are not necessarily the right strategies. The folks at Social Security are very well-meaning, but they give very bad advice, either kind of explicitly or implicitly, all the time. I'm writing columns all the time where I mention, here's what this person who emailed me was told to do, and here's what he should have done.
Yes.
And here's an example. I'll give you an example of, I went to a dinner party the other night. A gentleman is about 68, and a lovely guy, a doctor, fantastic person, and he was diagnosed with prostate cancer. So he's got about 2 years left to live under his calculation. He figured that he should take his Social Security benefit immediately. His wife is about, she's about 60, he's 68, she's about 66. So he goes to Social Security. They say, yeah, absolutely, take your benefit immediately. You're going to pass away. Otherwise, it'll be lost. That was the wrong decision, because if he had not taken the benefit, waited till 70, and didn't even get anything because he passes away, his wife's survivor benefit will be 16% higher for the rest of her life.
Wow.
So there's an example where it seems quite obvious to anybody that somebody should take their benefit right away, but it's not. It's not the right answer. And unless you compare doing that versus doing this, had the wife been 56, then what he did might have been optimal. Mm-hmm. But she was 60, she was this age, not that age.
Yeah.
So this is where getting the right strategy matters. And the good people at Social Security told him to do the wrong thing, and now he's stuck with 16% lower benefits the rest of her life, and they could use that extra money. Well, actually, they could. No, that couple, because he had been a doctor, he didn't really need. It wasn't that big a deal. Mm-hmm. But other couples, it would be a big deal.
Sure. So if you have the right questions asked of you initially by an advisor, by your software, and you're putting in the right data, you'll get the optimized out. Social Security is capable of optimizing because that's where the data comes from, but it's like junk in, junk out, because you don't know what to tell the system of how to maximize, and Social Security's people aren't knowledgeable enough to be able to advise that.
Yeah, their programs aren't set up to deal with couples. They aren't, for privacy issues, I think it's really a privacy issue that I don't think they'll ever be able to provide optimization software, because it would require one person entering his information and also the information for somebody else, and they wouldn't feel comfortable that that person should have access to that other information. Right. They don't want to give, for example, they don't want to give an ex-spouse information about the former spouse's earnings history, because that ex-spouse could go and claim more alimony. I mean, think about where these rules came from.
Yes.
And I think that's not fair, particularly to women who tend to be the lower earners. I think this is inappropriate, because this is actually information that is important to the ex-spouse to know that earnings record. So we're trying to make sure that that divorced person who can't get the earnings history of the ex-spouse can get a benefit level that we can then use and properly unpack it to make sure that we get the right answer for that person. The same answer we would get if we actually had their earnings history.
Sure. Yeah, you mentioned a little bit ago about annuities, and I like to refer to Social Security as America's favorite annuity, because technically the word annuity or annuitize would be an income stream, and that's what Social Security is. It's a lifetime income stream, one of the few that are available. But private annuities that you can purchase on the open marketplace also can provide lifetime income streams. I think the general public's knowledge, though, is that they believe that when it comes to the word annuity, that means you give up your lump sum principal in exchange for income. And that used to be the case, or it is the case if you annuitize, but there are new features available where you can take income for life and still own the principal, and as the income reduces the principal, it's still in your control and you still own it, and if you live long enough that you wipe out that principal, the income continues on. Is it important, in order to have a secure retirement and not have to unretire at some point because you run out of money, to have lifetime income streams that don't run out?
It's critically important. Everybody thinks they're going to die on time somehow until you press them, but there's no guarantee we're going to die on time. So the real risk, financially speaking, of life is not dying, because if you die, you're in heaven and you don't need money, okay? And you're not going to regret not having taken your benefits from Social Security or from anything. You know, you're not going to regret anything because you're in heaven, right?
Yeah, right.
The real risk, financial risk, is outliving your money, of living too long. And by doing the wrong thing and ending up at 95, my mom's an example. She's 94, and she's in excellent health, and she could easily make it to 105. She's beating people at the bridge table, you know, so we have to worry about the downside. This is insurance, and annuity insurance is about protecting you against a bad outcome. The bad outcome is living, quote, too long. Okay?
Longer than your money.
Longer than your money. Just like the bad outcome from having a house is that it burns down. So we think about buying homeowners insurance, and we all do it because of that bad outcome. We don't think about that as a break-even proposition. Here's the premium, here's the chances my house is going to burn down. Forget that.
Yeah.
We want to be insured because we're not otherwise protected in that bad outcome. That bad outcome is really bad.
Yeah.
We don't have 1,000, we're not an insurance company with 1,000 homes to burn down or not burn down. And we, as individuals, don't have 1,000 lives to live.
You can't spread the risk.
There was no way to spread the risk. So we have to think about the worst case scenario, which is living to 100 or even beyond, possibly. And our software takes the maximum age of life as the default at being 100, unless you set it at a different value. So Social Security's annuities or private annuities from the industry are very important. I bought annuities for my mom, who's now 94. As I said, when she was about 87, I took money from selling the condo that she was in, and I bought these annuities. My brother and sister, who are both extremely smart, well-educated, my brother's twin brother, he's the dean of the veterinary school at Cornell, the top veterinary school in the country. They weren't so sure that this was a good idea. I said, trust me, this is a good idea. Well, they're very thankful because this annuity that we bought for her, these two annuities, are paying for her assisted living facility, and otherwise it'd be coming out of our pockets.
Yeah.
So, but most Americans don't get this risk, and we have to kind of explain it to them in the right words.
Right.
that it's really living too long is a real risk.
I've heard that some individuals will say, well, I know that if you wait till 66 or 70, you can get more from Social Security than taking it at 62. But Larry, I'm not sure I'm going to make it to 66 or 70. And so instead of maximizing and getting maybe another 76% greater income or optimizing that income, they're worried about not benefiting by it. But like you just said, the risk is not dying too soon, it's living too long. And so don't worry about the break-even point, because if you aren't here, you don't need the money. And
it's insurance. You don't think about homeowners insurance or automobile insurance or health insurance on a break-even basis. Nobody does that unless they're Warren Buffett, maybe, okay?
Right.
Unless they have nobody does that. So this has to be thought of differently. The break-even is not the way to think about it. And therefore, we don't ask about your expected age of life because we know there's a good chance you're not going to die on time. We asked about your maximum age of life. That right there is a big difference between our software and I think most other programs. They don't make that distinction necessarily, and that's a critical distinction. And part of where the advantage of our software comes from is that I'm an economist, and economists have been thinking about these issues in a kind of quiet way for over 100 years, starting with Irving Fisher, who worked on the first kind of model of personal finance back in the 1920s. He was a Yale professor. He's noted for having predicted right before the crash in 29 that the stock market would never fall. Okay, so he's got a bad name for that, but he did fundamental work on this issue. So we've been working on this problem for 100 years. And we think about it quite differently from the way actuaries and accountants think about it. And we realize that when there's some issue of risk, real risk, lifespan risk, longevity risk, that's a problem of insurance. It's not a problem of saving.
I want you to put out your economist hat on for a moment. And on Social Security website, they have a pie chart, and it shows that for most Americans, approximately 1/3 of their retirement income comes from Social Security. So the other 2/3 is as critical or more critical even, because it's a bigger portion of the pie. So we've just been talking a lot about we need to optimize that 1/3 of the pie, but we need to optimize the 2/3 too in order to have enough to live. So what would you recommend of how we have the most secure retirement in face of greater advances in medicine and longevity?
Well, I think annuities are certainly a way to secure your lifestyle right through age 100 if you end up living that long. And you have to also think about health insurance risks that might increase the cost of those as you age. You have to worry about inflation, so having an annuity that rises through time so that you're protected to some extent against inflation. The best would be one that's fully indexed against inflation, but they're not as common. But if you buy something that's subject to inflation risk, then you might do other things in your portfolio to protect yourself against inflation risk. You kind of hedge yourself against inflation. Buying a home is another way to having a home paid off. That gives you a secure shelter until you pass away. That's really another way to kind of get a floor to your living standard. So these are the things we advise in our more elaborate financial planning software that we also market through our company.
Yeah, so a little bit of diversification, optimize Social Security, optimize the other 2/3 of the pie. When our advisors would visit with folks, we talk about all 3/3 of the pie, because isn't it true that we couldn't do a good job for a person if we only talked to them about Social Security and didn't know whether or not it made sense that they could delay because they could take from other sources of income?
Let me give you another issue here, which is the income taxation of Social Security benefits. For some people, Social Security benefits are up to 85% of them are subject to federal income taxation. And if you wait to take your benefits, suppose you're a single person who's never been married, to keep it really simple, and you take your benefits at 62 from Social Security. Well, if you wait to 70, you'll get a 76% higher number adjusted for inflation forever. So you're giving up 8 years of benefits for a higher annuity. So is that worth it? And can you make it to age 70 without the income? Maybe you're retiring at 62. Well, what if you take your IRA and use it during that period? Well, this is a period where you don't have a lot of other income, so the tax rate won't be so high. But in addition, by taking your IRA money out early and then maybe taking your Roth money out after age 70, the Roth money is not included in the calculation of your adjusted gross income for purposes of taxing your Social Security benefits.
Oh.
Right? Mm-hmm. So here, by playing, by thinking about the right strategy for when you should take your retirement accounts, you can lower your lifetime income taxes. Forget increasing your Social Security benefits. That's an important issue. But there's another important issue, which is how do you deal with your other resources to lower your lifetime income taxes so as to have a higher sustainable living standard? And there again, that requires some thought.
Sure. They say people don't plan on failing, they simply fail to plan. And we want our folks to plan. Yeah,
but people need to plan, but they also need the right tools, because nobody, including myself, can do the planning on his own or her own. Congress has made our lives so complicated.
Yes.
If you look at Medicare Part B premiums, that's a very complicated progressive income tax right there. Okay?
Yeah.
And then you've got Social Security, you've got the federal income tax. You got to have sophisticated, reliable software under the hood.
Sure.
And then you need to know who to trust on that. And
right. And we appreciate being able to have you train us and work with you and have access to your software for the benefit of our clients and for our advisors around the country. And I want to thank you very much for coming today and working with us and sharing your knowledge with us. It's been very delightful.
Well, you're a great guy to work with, and I think very highly of you personally, Tucker, because I know Karlan.
That's all right.
Karlan, sorry, because I know that you're not just interested in making money for your company and your employees, but I see you, today here, right before this interview, I want your listeners to know you're involved for 2 hours now in trying to get money to the Philippines in the middle of this crisis that they're facing. That's an enormously important thing, and it says a lot about your character and what your company is all about. So
thank you very much.
God bless you.
Yeah, we really appreciate what you're doing for Americans in their retirement.
Yeah.
So we want to encourage our viewers to take the next step. Call and visit with a smarter Social Security advisor about how you can optimize your Social Security income by perhaps $100,000 or more in lifetime income. You can reach us at the number on the screen. Again, I want to thank Dr. Kotlikoff and our viewers. We want to encourage you to not make a mistake of a lifetime by missing out on what you've paid into the Social Security system through taxes your whole life. The average American worker has worked 90,000 hours by the time they're 65 and by the time they typically retire. We want you to get the most out of your Social Security benefits, perhaps as much as $100,000 or more. Optimize the income generation capability of all your savings and investments, and call us at Smarter Social Security at the number on your screen. We want to thank you and wish you optimized and sustainable income throughout your retirement. Have a great day.